The Dallas Cowboys have a ton of terrifying individual matchups on their schedule, but which ones are the scariest? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're taking a look at three of the most terrifying matchups that the Cowboys will have during the 2024 season, including a former MVP, a former Defensive Player of the Year. But let's start right in week one, Landon. Myles Garrett against Tyler Guyton. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of immediately circled this matchup when the schedule came out, knowing that, I mean, I think we all knew that obviously that Tyler Guyton was going to have to face Myles Garrett, but to have to face him in week one, I think even makes things more difficult for a guy who's coming in, obviously, swapping sides of which position he's playing, coming into the NFL, and his first matchup is, maybe the best defensive end in all of football. So I think that it's the combination of the things, right? It's the fact that he's having to play such an elite player, and the fact that he's having to play him so early in his career as he's still kind of getting his feet wet. It's a real kind of welcome to the NFL moment he's going to have in week one.
Yeah, not only is he playing against arguably the best pass rusher in the league, but it's on the road in Cleveland, home opener. It's going to be loud. It's really tough. Now, Garrett's only played the Cowboys one time, Landon. I've got the stats for you. This is against Tyron Smith and Terrence Steele, because in this game, and Garrett does, he moves around. But in the last game against those two guys, 8 pressures, 2 sacks, 6 hurries, and a 27% winning percentage, pass rush win rate. Against Tyron Smith, 4 years ago, Tyron Smith and Terrence Steele. He's pretty good. Myles Garrett, obviously, real rough matchup for Guyton. So what I want to know from you is, what do we need from Tyler Guyton in order for the Cowboys to win this game? Like, I mean, how poorly does he need to play in order for this to be a lost game for Dallas?
I mean, I think that he's going to get help. I mean, obviously that's going to be part of the game plan with the rookie offensive tackle against the best defensive player in football, or one of them. So I think, as long as he's not making monumental errors, as long as he's, working with his help to kind of corral Garrett, he's going to get beat. He's going to lose some reps to Garrett. I think that's the key is just kind of keeping it, in a reasonable sense. I mean, I think, like I said, the Cowboys are going to game plan for the fact that Garrett is going to be a problem. They'll try to, run plays away from him. They'll do
their best.
They'll move the pocket. They'll do some things to kind of get Dak out on the edge and to kind of give him some more opportunities. But I think for Guyton, it's just going to be, holding on for dear life and just kind of don't make the mental mistakes to compound, the problems that you're going to have physically facing a grown man coming as a pass rusher. Don't sometimes what can happen is that, tackles can be not so confident about how their help works. And that can, there's that kind of passing off and the working in conjunction with the guy that's chipping and working in conjunction with the guy that's the tight end that's lined up outside of you. So just communication and making sure that you understand where that extra guy is going to be for your help, and that you're not both going outside and leaving Myles Garrett to run inside, that sort of thing. So it's really going to come down to communication with his teammates that are helping him, and then just trying to stay as mentally sharp as possible, because, the physical is part of it. you're going to lose some of these reps. It's Myles Garrett. Don't also get beat, by making a dumb mistake.
Yeah. What makes this matchup really hard is that Jim Schwartz, their relatively new defensive coordinator, he was hired last year, has done a better job of moving Myles Garrett around rather than just going up against one offensive tackle all game long. They move him around. We saw, snaps last year where he's standing up over the center, very much like a Micah Parsons, or he's playing defensive tackle in certain situations, or he's playing both sides. So it's a lot harder to game plan against or game plan for Myles Garrett. On top of that, let's say Garrett's going up against Terrence Steele on the right side. It's not like they don't have other pass rushers.
Yeah, true.
It's a very good pass rusher. Double O, who they signed from Houston a year ago, was injured with a pec injury. One of the best speed rushers in the league. They've got other dudes. It's going to be a really tough matchup, not only for Tyler Guyton, but for this entire offensive line that's likely to have two new starters.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you add in Schwartz likes to use that kind of wide 9 formation that really gets the defensive ends out there isolated, and so it makes it difficult to, kind of communicate with your help, especially on the outside, because you kind of have to both get out there to get to him, to get hands on him without giving up the inside rush. So. I think, Schwartz has obviously really been one of the best in the league about getting his pass rushers free and finding ways to kind of get them going. And like you mentioned, it's not like the Cowboys are out of the woods when they get Myles Garrett blocked. They got a lot of talent on that defensive line that can disrupt. So I think generally speaking, the Cowboys would do well to try to maybe, run the football a little bit, get the quick passing game going a little bit, just to kind of free things up a little more. Get the defensive line thinking a little bit more instead of just pinning their ears back and attacking a rookie offensive tackle.
I mean, here's the thing. The Cowboys are going to play several defenses this year that could easily finish as the number one defense. I mean, Cleveland was the number one defense in the league for most of the year last year. We're going to talk about Baltimore in a second, who did finish as the number one scoring defense. They play Pittsburgh later in the year, in week 5, and Pittsburgh has several all-pro players all across their defense. So I don't think you're going to see the shootouts like we saw last year, maybe outside of the division, but it's going to be a real test to see how this offense works against better defenses, which frankly they need. They could really use some of those tough physical battles early in the season to build some character.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's kind of in theme with what they're trying to do, offensively anyways, just trying to build a little bit of a tougher nails team up front, and you're going to get a great opportunity to kind of test the improvements in the offseason to see, against these guys who are, legitimately some of the toughest front sevens you're going to face anywhere in the NFL. Yep. So, it all starts with week 1 against Myles Garrett, but it doesn't get a lot better after that for the Cowboys, to be honest.
Nope. The Cowboys will play a former NFL MVP, actually a 2-time NFL MVP in the first month of the season. We will talk about Lamar Jackson next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and even easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer that it gets to first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Listen, you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you, and save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And get this, you can save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose your exact seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories, without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or in the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, the Cowboys, we're going to find out about their run defense pretty quickly into the season because they will play the Baltimore Ravens, I believe, in week 3 or week 4. I don't remember off the top of my head. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
No, it doesn't. And, it's funny because the whole early part of the schedule is really, truly just a stress test, it feels like, for all the elements of the Cowboys had concerns about, right? Like, they obviously went out to improve the offensive line. We're talking about Myles Garrett and that Browns defensive line. They obviously went out and tried to improve that run defense. And Lamar Jackson and the everything that offense brings to the table is a great test for how this Cowboys defense has improved in the run and also kind of in a subcategory in their discipline, right? Because I really think that this kind of defense is really going to stress the Cowboys cues and reads. And it's really going to be a good litmus test for someone like Zimmer, who, I think the one thing that we keep hearing over and over again about Zimmer and in the comparison to Quinn is that he wants guys who are where they are supposed to be at all time. He has very specific, thoughts on how these schemes are supposed to be run. And if you can't run it the way that he wants, then you're not long to be on the field. So I think that, the ultimate test of this outside of, maybe a Shanahan offense is to kind of face this sort of Baltimore offense that obviously has a quarterback who is an incredible threat to run the football as well as throw the football. You obviously added one of the best running backs in football to that mix. And I think, the kind of stress that those two are going to be able to put on run defenses is going to be a test for even the best defenses in football. So for the Cowboys, for them, kind of rehauling that second level of their defense, bringing in Zimmer with a renewed emphasis on stopping the run and being able to stop these kind of offenses. I really do think that this is a really great, very similar to the Cleveland situation for the young offensive line. I really do think this is a great test to see exactly how far this group is and are they far enough? And, maybe they get to this game, they get a face full of this offense and they realize, hey, we still have a little ways to go.
Now, this game is in Dallas, so maybe that'll help, but it also just might make Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry look even faster.
It's not like Baltimore hasn't played well in Dallas, for God's sakes.
I know. I was going to say, the last time, actually, Lamar's only played the Cowboys once. In that game, 12 of 17 for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns passing, rushing 13 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. In that game, Baltimore ran 37 times for 294 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is 8 yards a pop. They're going to need to be a little bit better than that this time around if they want to have any chance to compete. It's just a really tough matchup, and it's a really tough matchup when you only play Lamar Jackson once every 4 years.
Yeah.
If you actually look at the Ravens, like in the AFC, and certainly like in the AFC North, they don't fare quite as well. It's just all these uncommon games. They absolutely dominate. Like that's what they did last year. They crushed.
To prepare for.
They crushed the Lions. They crushed the Seahawks. It's really hard to prepare for Lamar Jackson once every 4 years, but we'll see if Zim is up to the task.
Yeah, for sure. And Zimmer coming from college, spending a year in college with Deion Sanders' crew, maybe that helps with a little bit of the kind of game planning of these kind of situations. They have a lot more of these types of offenses in college, that is going to be like a true, pass run RPO based set. You've got a quarterback with the threat of running the football. So, you hope that maybe he studied up a little bit, but yeah, I think you nailed it. Like that's the benefit you get by playing kind of an unconventional offense is when you play non-common opponents. It's a difficult prepare for them. It's a one-off situation. It's not something that they are preparing for week to week and they're just subbing in players. It's a different situation. So
Well, and
The
to be fair,
Cowboys,
Dallas is pretty. I mean, Dallas isn't as unique as Baltimore, but if you look at like the Cowboys' uncommon opponents under Dak Prescott, they've done very, very well. Now it's against the teams that they play, more often than not, like San Fran, like Green Bay is where they struggle. But we see that's not an uncommon thing to see in the NFL.
no doubt. But I think adding in the fact that of the uniqueness of the offense, it makes it a little bit more of a difficult prepare. And again, for a defense that coming into the year was looking to improve this area specifically, it really is going to be a nice measuring stick to see exactly where this defense is on that journey.
Are you prepared for like Derrick Henry to have the best game of his life? He lives in Dallas. He wanted the Cowboys to sign him in free agency. Will play, at AT&T Stadium this year. I mean, it's early in the year, so he'll be healthy. Like, I'm just fully prepared for a huge Derrick Henry game.
Well,
and
all these games, all these situations are that, right? Like, it's like, even Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett's a Dallas guy. You think he isn't going to want to come in here and totally, show out in front of all his friends and family? TJ Watt is kind of a very similar situation, except in the draft with Henry.
Cowboys,
So where the Cowboys clearly had interest there, or maybe they didn't when they should have. There was definitely a world in which TJ Watt, and if I was running the Cowboys, would have been a Dallas Cowboy. So I do think that, add in the fact that these are very difficult players, and then the bonus of the fact that some of them have personal vendettas against the Cowboys, and it's going to make for 3 very long days, and maybe the third one might be the longest one of all, to be honest.
I mean, I'm also looking forward to this matchup because it's probably the last year we'll have in the Derrick Henry versus Ezekiel Elliott debate. I mean, it's been really fun for the last however many years. So this is probably the last year I can milk it out, right?
Probably. I mean, maybe they both come back next year just to give you like the long goodbye for running backs don't matter.
Fun. All right, you mentioned TJ Watt. Let's talk about that matchup on Sunday Night Football in Week 5 next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Everydayers, we will be back on Monday. We're taking the long holiday weekend off, and we'll be back to talk about all the latest Dallas Cowboys breaking news, which we hope we get some over 4th of July. Wouldn't that be awesome, Lana? Like to come back on Monday and have all 3, Dak, CD, and Micah signed. Wouldn't that be fun?
Happy 4th to us all, for sure. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
Don't hold your breath.
We'll have to be creative and come up with something else. But let's talk about TJ Watt against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Now, Watt almost exclusively lines up on the right tackle side. So he'll be going up against Terrence Steele. The last time they played, which is in 2020, you might remember that as the Garrett Gilbert game that he started, and the Cowboys were playing Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh was 10-0 at the time. TJ Watt that game, 7 pressures, 1 sack, 4 hurries, 3 pass deflections. I mean, it's going to be the same matchup, Steele against Watt. I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel great about Watt against most tackles, but I think Steele obviously has some, negative history here. I do think that Steele is going to bounce back from last season. I think that Steele is going to have a much better season than he did last year, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to have a good time against a former defensive player of the year candidate. So TJ Watt is just a really difficult matchup. He has explosiveness, speed to power. I think he plays with incredible leverage. I think he's a different type of player than Myles Garrett. But I think similarly effective in the sense that, he can get around the corner quickly. He can use the power once he gets around the corner. He effectively blends his speed and power together. For Watt, for Steele, it's going to be just really important that he is kind of just keeping it in front of him, is that he's, is minding his technique. He's got to trust his technique a little bit, because guys like TJ Watt, they'll make you, try to hurry, or they'll try to, punch too soon. And that's like catnip for guys like Watt, who can just get a swim move and get back inside. So, again, kind of almost similar to what we talked about with the Browns situation, right? Like the Steelers have a couple of different guys who can get after the quarterback. So there's not going to be a ton of opportunity for Steele to get a lot of help with TJ Watt, because there's likely to be already some help happening on Guyton's side,
with Alex Highsmith, who is a very good player. Yep,
that's right. So this one is less so than more so than the matchup for Garrett and Guyton. This one really is going to be a lot more on Steele to kind of stop Watt, because he's not going to get a lot of the help that the left tackle is going to get. So, again, we talked about litmus test and measuring sticks and all that. Terrence Steele obviously had a very down year last year. He was able to come back from the ACL injury, but it felt like it kind of sapped him of a lot of energy, especially early in the season. As the season wore on, you saw him play a little bit better football as he starts to get healthier and healthier. And I think that's going to continue into this training camp and into this season. But I think, it's a very, very good measuring stick for him to have to go against a guy like TJ Watt, who's explosive around the edge. Has Terrence Steele gotten some of that explosion back that was kind of missing earlier in the season last year? This is going to be a great way to find out. Maybe not a great way for Dak to find out, but a great way for the rest of us to kind of see exactly where Steele is in his recovery from his ACL and his knee.
I'm actually glad that you brought up Dak, because I think Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons are the best two rushers in the league in like the first 2.5 seconds of a play, because they're so quick and so explosive. They can create pressure almost instantly. I think Watt is the best pass rusher in the league after 2.5 seconds. He has just a really good feel of where the quarterback's going to be at. He's relentless, and he's hunting quarterbacks 3, 4, 5 seconds into the play. I actually think this is more about Dak. This has more to do about Dak than it does Terrence Steele. Dak's got to know, like, in this game, if you get to your second read and it's not there, throw the ball away. Don't hold it, hoping for that third option to open up, because that's when the sacks happen. That's when the strip sacks happen. Dak has got to be very cautious and know where Watt and Highsmith are at, even after the first 2.5 seconds or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, that's a lot of times the difference between a pressure turning into a sack and a pressure just staying a pressure, right? Is the ability for the quarterback to process that information and either get rid of the ball or not, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that there's definitely going to be, times when Steele will get beat early and Dak will have to figure out how to make that work, get rid of the ball, just not take a sack. Yeah. So it definitely, we've been hyping this as a Watt versus Steele situation, but there's definitely going to be moments when the Watt versus Steele matchup is over and it becomes about Dak doing what he can do to try to save the play from being a disaster in which, a strip sack or just even a sack on third down or something like that happens.
Yeah, I just want to mention a couple other matchups just really quickly. Obviously San Francisco, the Christian McCaffrey matchup is really hard. I'm really interested to see CJ Stroud against the Cowboys defense and what that looks like.
Sure.
I want to see the Jamar Chase, T. Higgins against Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland. I hope all 4 players are healthy so we can see that and see what it looks like. And then, of course, you play at the end of the year, Kellen Moore against Mike Zimmer. And I know that's not a player matchup. That's a coach battle. I just think that one's going to be really interesting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of great matchups, obviously, throughout the season. Some of them good for the Cowboys, some of them not. But I think, the 3 we pointed out, the ones that are the most concerning, I think, in my opinion. But they're definitely not the only 3, interesting to watch matchups. There's a lot of great storylines that's going to happen this year. Just where we stand in the preseason, I can only imagine it's going to get more and more so as we get into the regular season.
It's a tough schedule for the Cowboys, but it's a really tough schedule for a young offensive line, because even a team like the Giants, who added Brian Burns, they have Kayvon Thibodeau, they have Dexter Lawrence, like the Cowboys are going to be favored to win those 2 games, but that's going to be a really tough matchup on a young offensive line. I think the same for the Washington games, same for Tampa Bay, who they play later in the year. So I think we're going to find out pretty quickly about this Cowboys offensive line and if they are up to the task this season. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Again, every day, go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you download your podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy your holiday weekend, and we will see you right back here on Monday.